welcome to a new vlog and video in cooperation with ReiseJung. We're taking a look at the next 2 days on board of the river Sapphire, days 3 and 4. We are starting in Vienna, spending the whole day there, and then we are continuing on day 4 to Esztergom and Budapest. Here on the map you can see our route, and we are starting with a beautiful sunrise in Vienna, seen from my French balcony. It was a very beautiful morning, and it seems to be like it's gonna be another beautiful day. The morning started quite relaxing whilst a few of our guests were taking an excursion to Castle Schönbrunn. I was just taking a walk on the Danube, walking past the Swiss Crown, ship that we're gonna be on 3 times next year, and past the impressive Ama Magna, the biggest ship on the Danube. I even saw some rats at the bank of the Danube. It was also quite interesting to see them. And then I took a train video, which will be the next video, and in the afternoon I joined the excursion city tour through Vienna. We started with a panoramic drive on the so-called ring, and then we visited Castle Belvedere. From there you also have a fantastic view over Vienna, and after a short walk around the castle we headed back to our bus and headed into the city center of Vienna. We didn't join the walking tour in the city center because there's one thing I always have to do when I'm in Vienna, and of course it's visiting a famous cafe house. A cafe house that's a cafe, it's quite typical for Vienna, and the most famous one is a Café Sacher, but I'm not going there as it is the place where the most tourists are going and it's always crowded. Instead I go to Café Gerstner. Here you can see it. You can see Café Sacher right opposite, but the problem with Café Sacher is if you have to wait, and usually you have to wait, you're gonna wait outside. Café Gerstner, if you even have to wait at all, you may wait inside, and then you're gonna get into this magnificent room. It's one of the most beautiful cafes I've ever seen, and it's not only looking nice, they also offer very nice food and drinks, not only coffee and cake, but also wines. And even main courses are served in this beautiful location. So my big recommendation for Vienna is visiting Café Gerstner. We then walked back to our group to the meeting point at Schwedenplatz, and then we continued on to the Prater, the amusement park I've already visited yesterday, but yesterday it was a private visit and now it's part of the excursion. We had a free time of around 45 minutes there. That's enough to take a tour on the famous Ferris wheel, the Wiener Riesenrad. It's also what a lot of guests did. Some others just went for a coffee, and of course I went for the roller coasters again. This time I even got to ride some of the coasters that are not always open, like the rollerball. Of course I tried once again the Wiener Looping, the new roller coaster, because it is a very nice one. It's a lot of fun. And my highlight was the Hochschaubahn. This is one of the oldest attractions here at the Prater, 75 years old. It's a lot of fun, quite old historic roller coaster. There's even a breaker on board, so it was something very special to ride such an old roller coaster. And past the more modern attractions, we then walked back to our coach, which will now bring us back to the beautiful river Sapphire. And as soon as everybody is on board, it's also already time to leave. We're leaving Vienna and continuing on to Esztergom. Also here our captain tried to be as fast as possible because there's a lock coming up just a few minutes after departing Vienna, and there's the same problem like in Passau. All ships are almost leaving at the same time, so there are some longer queues, and this time there was only one of 2 chambers open, so it was quite important to be there as soon as possible, but still we had to wait for a while. But it was no problem because our schedule was not too tight. On our way to the lock we were also passing a few low bridges. We were allowed to stay on the sun deck. The crew was there to make sure that everybody stays seated so that it remains safe. And whilst we were waiting in front of the lock until we were allowed to enter the lock, it was time for another fantastic dinner on board. As I said, food quality on the river Sapphire was very nice. Really enjoyed all the meals on board. And then it was time for our ReiseJung show ensemble. Our 2 musicians, Valerie and Thomas, were on board again with a fantastic show called Servus Wien, a show specially made just for this cruise. And of course we're gonna see a few clips of this show now. Unfortunately, it is the last cruise with Valerie and Thomas this year, but we will see them in the next videos a couple more times. We then sailed past Bratislava and then it was time to sleep, and then the next morning I woke up in Esztergom. We were docking there with 5 ships in a row. That is a record for me on the Danube. That was because of a low water situation. One of the 2 docking locations was not usable for most ships, so all had to go to the other one. Therefore, there were 5 ships in a row. That was also quite impressive. But due to the low water, it was still not safe if we are able to make it to Budapest. Some ships, like the big ships of Arosa, already had to turn around and go back because it was not possible for them to reach Budapest. As our ship was a little bit smaller, we still had 1 centimeter left. If the water would drop 1 more centimeter, also we were not allowed to continue sailing in the direction of Budapest, but luckily the water was slowly rising again, and so we were allowed to go to Budapest. And as soon as the decision was made, we were also leaving the ship and heading to the famous Basilica of Esztergom. But that's the reason why we didn't join the excursion to the Danube Band and the castle of Visegrad, which I would have loved to see, but of course I'm gonna do that next time. But it's also always impressive to see the cathedral from the inside. Unfortunately, there were still some constructions going on. They should have been finished, but there were some delays, so there were still some constructions visible, but still it's always beautiful to see the cathedral of Esztergom. Most ships with German guests are only stopping here for a very short moment. The passengers are leaving the ship and the ship is continuing on to Budapest, but we decided to stay here in the morning so that every guest has the chance to see the cathedral. But then it was time to leave. Luckily, more or less all schedules were the same, so all ships could leave at the same time. Here we can see the Swiss Crown, which was docked next to us, and on the other side was the brand new Riviera Radiance. And we're now heading in the direction of Budapest. In the meantime, I was enjoying lunch with a plate looking very typical for a buffet, a little bit of everything. And in the meantime, we were sailing through the Danube Band, a very beautiful part of the Danube, where the river is also changing its direction. It's going usually from west to east, but after the bend it's going from north to south. We're also sailing past the castle of Visegrad. And here we can see a cruise ship called Ariana. This was the first river cruise ship I've traveled on, and also the first river cruise ship I worked on my own, so a very special ship for me. And then already Budapest came in sight. We were arriving there a little bit earlier than planned. It was planned to arrive there during darkness, but due to the low water situation, it was not very sure how much time it actually takes to get to Budapest, and it was working better than expected, so we were arriving a bit earlier. But also during daylight it is a beautiful experience to sail into Budapest. Of course, here we can see the Parliament, the most impressive building, and also some other very beautiful buildings. So it is the most spectacular part of the Danube, so it is highly recommended to go to the sun deck when your ship is arriving in Budapest. We were very happy that we are actually here right now, as it was not sure just a couple of hours ago if we can make it, so it was a very nice feeling to arrive in Budapest, which of course is the highlight of the cruise for many passengers. Here we are turning around, and now we're approaching our docking location. We still had to wait until the Viva Enjoy left the docking location so we can dock there in first row. Meanwhile, we were still admiring the beauty of Budapest from the sun deck, and then it was time for another fantastic dinner on board. After dinner, our guests were going on a light tour through Budapest by bus, but I didn't join them because my girlfriend was coming on board and I wanted to pick her up, so I decided to not join the excursion. But as soon as she was on board, of course, we also did our own private light tour, and for this I would recommend taking the tram of the line 2, for example, which is going directly on the bank of the Danube, and you can see all those illuminated sites. Just make sure to do that before 10 o'clock, because on some days the illumination will be turned off already at 10 p.m. On this day it stayed on a little bit longer as we were arriving there 5 minutes before 10, but the illuminations stayed on for a little bit longer. Of course, the most spectacular thing to see during darkness is the Parliament, as you can see here. And after seeing this, we headed into the city center to the Ruin Bars. That's quite a famous bar in Budapest, and there we met with the whole ReiseJung team for a nice evening, as we had a lot of time because our ship stayed overnight. Here you can see the Ruin Bars. It's a bar located in a ruin, and it's very nice place to be, so good recommendation for an evening in Budapest. After that we walked back to our ship, and that's it for days 3 and 4. In the next video you will see the train video from Vienna, and after that we will see the next 2 days on board. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Here you can see when the next video will be uploaded, the name of the song, and in the video description you can find the link to Valerie and Thomas and to ReiseJung. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to comment, like, subscribe or share the video link, and I hope to see you in my next video, or maybe even on board of one of the ReiseJung cruises.